Thanks for joining, everyone. We'll be kicking off in just a few minutes. While we're waiting, if you could put in the chat, who is headed to Inbound this year? If you don't know, Inbound is HubSpot's like big conference. It's in Boston the first week of September.
I'll be there, Dustin.
How many Inbounds have you been to, Michael?
Well, you're stealing one of my slides, but I've been to 5.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
I love Inbound. I'm so pumped. Favorite part by far, beyond the knowledge you take away, is the food trucks.
You're obsessed with that food truck.
There's the chicken and rice guys or whatever it is. Every year, it's like my favorite meal of the year, and it's so simple and basic. But yeah, pumped to be back in Boston, and we'll throw a fit if there is not a chicken and rice truck.
I feel like that's the one that always has like the longest line, so I'm sure it'll be there.
Every
Jill
year
says the chickpea truck.
It's like, should I just start something super easy like a chicken and rice truck? And then it's like, no, that seems too hard. But it's wild how popular it is.
The line gets crazy.
I haven't had the chickpea truck.
I haven't either.
Because I am too scared to stray away from chicken and rice now.
So like every day that you're at Inbound, you just get the same thing?
It's healthy. It's delicious. It's worth it.
Yeah, fair. I like the grilled cheese one.
I probably had that like my first year.
I like that one. Though it is like so hot out there in September still, and it comes with like the soup. It's
the tomato soup. Yeah.
Not necessarily the best.
Yeah. I remember that one year that you and I were there, and it was like a heat wave. It was like 108. It was wild.
Yeah. Where we went and like explored Boston and we're just like sweating.
Yeah. Sweating through the mall.
Well, cool. People are still joining, but it is the top of the hour, so we'll go ahead and get rolling here. So I'm Dustin Brackett. I'm the CEO and founder of HIVE Strategy. Really excited for this webinar today, and want to introduce Michael Thebeau. Michael is our director of sales, and today he's going to be talking about tips and tricks to transform the way you utilize Sales Hub. So we are very much all in on HubSpot and drink all the orange Kool-Aid. But there's some underutilized kind of pieces to Sales Hub that Michael's going to touch on today and kind of give some, I guess, some pro tips on how to get more out of the Sales Hub software. So Michael, I'll just turn it over to you.
Yeah, appreciate it. Well, thanks everybody for taking the time out of your busy schedule. I'm hoping that this is worthwhile for you. You're able to glean a couple tips and tricks and tools within the sales functionality, Sales Hub functionality, that you can kind of take to your team. Some of it may be redundant because you're already using the tool, or it seems so simplistic, but we'll dive a little bit deeper into just different ways you can utilize the tools, or maybe ways that you haven't thought about utilizing it. Additionally, would love for this to be as interactive as possible. So we'll save some time at the end for Q&A. But if you have questions that come up on a specific slide, a specific tip, a specific tool, feel free to put them in the chat. And if I don't get to them right away, certainly we'll follow back and get to them in the Q&A. Give me a second here. I'm going to seem like I'm my grandparents trying to use a computer. But I am going to hop in. And let's see if I could also pull up the chat here. Can somebody give me a thumbs up in the chat that they're able to see the presentation properly and we're not staring at? Perfect. I got one I can, so I feel good about it. Perfect. Cool. Sounds good. Well, again, topic for this, transform the way you're using Sales Hub. A little bit about me. As Dustin mentioned, I am the director of sales here at HIVE Strategy. I have worked with HubSpot for over 5+ years. That's utilizing the tool, working in it day in and day out, selling it, working with clients that use it. So a ton of exposure to HubSpot itself. I've worked at 2 of the top 50 HubSpot agencies in the US. So again, just been super ingrained in it over the last 5-6 years of my career. And as you guys probably heard, Dustin and I mentioning Inbound. I'm a 5-time Inbound veteran. Phenomenal conference. Our entire team, not the entire team, but a majority of the team is going to be out there this year. We'll have a booth. Dustin's going to be speaking and presenting on his book, Market Like a Human. So feel free to check that out. Swing by the booth, say hi, introduce yourself. If you want to grab coffee, happy hour, anything like that, I'm always down for a drink. So yeah, would love to get to know some of you guys there in person. A little bit about me. I am a diehard Denver sports fan. I'm in the Denver area. Go Nuggets, but big time Denver sports fan. And I guess I love sports. I'm kind of a boring all-American kind of guy, but love golfing, tennis, pickleball, snowboarding. Pickleball is my newest obsession. What we can kind of hope to get out of the presentation and the webinar today. I want to talk about just the Sales Hub features as we go up through different tiers of Sales Hub. Just take a quick minute to walk through the tools you would get at each level. That way, if there's a tool I mentioned that piques your interest, you can go back, check to see if you have it, check to see if you're using it, if you're using it properly, or maybe it's time to upgrade to the next tier in HubSpot. After we take a look at those, we'll really dive into the actual topics, tips, and really how to get the most out of your HubSpot and your Sales Hub specifically. And then, like I said, have that Q&A session there at the end. So here at the starter level, quotes, meeting scheduling, and reporting dashboard, all very simple. You get those at the free level. Snippets is the first tool that you get once you jump to that starter level. At the starter level, you only get 5. We'll talk more about how we use snippets in a sales capacity, but you get that at the starter level, at least 5 canned snippets. You get some simple automation. You get to set goals for your sales team, and then you can track individual reps' productivity within there. Jumping up to the pro level is where I see the biggest jump. You get sequences. Obviously, that's the massive automation aspect that Sales Hub offers. You get custom reporting, super important for you to be able to track those things. One-to-one video messaging. I love this. I used to have a kind of coaching session called Embrace Your Face on the importance of video messaging within sales. So being able to create custom videos that you can share just straight from your webcam. You can send them in emails. You can add them to HubSpot knowledge-based articles, blogs, whatever it might be. I think that's a huge feature that just builds that connection, that personal connection, and you're able to put a face to the name. Playbooks, we'll talk more about those and how they can work with snippets. Forecasting is huge. And then the ABM tools and some of the reporting functionality you get out of there. And then jumping up to that enterprise level, I think custom objects for me is the aspect that really makes your CRM molded specifically for your business. Being able to pull data from other places, tables, softwares, things like that, and you can house all of that data under one roof. Super important. The predictive lead scoring, being able to rank leads based off contact or companies, seeing how interested they are. We use that a ton. Deal splits, being able to split that up over different participants throughout the sales process. Conversation intelligence, using AI through your calls to see how interested and how calls are going and stuff like that. And then advanced permissions, being able to turn on and off different aspects of your HubSpot or your portal or your database, depending on, a person's title, role, whatever it might be. All right. So diving into it, first I want to talk on clean data. This isn't necessarily sales specific, but we'll certainly talk about why it's important from the sales perspective and, how we can kind of clean up that data as a salesperson. But I know that before diving into this, some of you are probably thinking like clean data. We all know that it's important and it seems pretty obvious, but I would turn that back around on you and say, like, do you have processes in place to continually clean up your database, right? What do you do when you come across a contact that is bounced within your CRM? Do you clean it up, or do you just move on to the next thing or the next task? What does your sales team do? Does everybody on the sales team do the same thing? Does everybody on the marketing team do the same thing, right? So clean data makes total sense in theory, and it's one of those things that we know how important it is, but it's often an overlooked aspect of your database. Getting into that first point, the database truly is your everything, and you need to treat it as such. It's the lifeblood of your business, and it's where you keep a large portion, if not all, of your company's data. So my first tip here is to create and mold your database to fit your business. Get super creative with it, and know that the CRM is not meant to be the perfect out-of-the-box solution. So it's imperative to figure out what the right business properties, what the right automation is for you, what the right deal stage is, because it's not going to be the same for every SaaS business, every e-commerce business, every industrial business. You're all going to care about something different. So set it up specifically for you. Once it's set up, the job is still far from over, right? As you grow, your HubSpot should grow with and change with your business. So it's one of those things that you're constantly improving, constantly iterating on, constantly adding new pieces to. Speaking of clean data, I feel like I probably speak for the majority, if not all salespeople, but I know how important it is to have clean data and how often we miss that step. As a salesperson, I'm always trying to drive revenue. I'll have a great sales call and I'll jump off and I'll forget to do any of the updates, add notes, whatever it might be. So ensuring I've got the right phone number, the right billing address, the right decision maker's contact, and then have added my notes helps to ensure that we don't miss any steps. There aren't any gaps within our sales process, and it helps the other teams that are using this database as well. Starting today, it's really up to you to instill within your team the right data process, the right cleaning process. So take some time to coach and train everyone on how to clean up your database, what's important to instill, or what's important to glean out of every conversation to add to your database, and ensure that you're just starting with kind of a blank and fresh and clean slate. Moving on, removing bad contacts. It's one of those things that I see all of the time where somebody signs up with a fake email, right? They use test@test.com or sample@123.com. And additionally, a lot of companies are buying bulk lead lists that are littered with just like bad contacts, bad emails, terrible data, but those are living within your database. If we continue to let this bad data live within the CRM, over time, it's going to start to deteriorate the entire database. So you'll begin to land on spam lists. You'll start to lose your email authority. My tip here is everyone that signs up for a subscribe list, whether it's blog or podcast or newsletter, someone who becomes a customer, anybody who's putting their email into your database, send out that email letter to check the validity of their email. If it bounces back, take them out quickly so that they don't land on other lists, so that you don't continually bulk email them, and so that your sales team isn't continually emailing these false bad emails. List segmentation, build lists that are super relevant to your service offerings, different personas, current clients, target accounts, whatever it might be. We've seen databases with 6-figure contact numbers that have absolutely no segmentation or organization within them. And it's just wild to me how sophisticated a business can be, how much millions they're pulling in revenue, and they just have a database that has zero organization to it. So whether it's for the marketing team or the sales team, the service team, building lists and segmenting your database will not only help you to organize your contacts, but will also help you to work more efficiently. And the final piece of the clean data slide is really that time savings piece. The first thing I want to point out from a sales perspective is if we can keep clean data, we eliminate wasting time reaching out to bad contacts. This is huge from both a sales and a marketing perspective, because if we're continually emailing these people, trying to get their attention, trying to draw their eyes, but it's going nowhere, it does nothing for you, and it's just a waste of time and energy and effort. The other side note I'd say is companies are paying tens of thousands to get their database cleaned up after they've let it slide away for 6 months, a year, 5 years, whatever it might be. If you can take control of that process and really hammer in the nail to your sales team, your marketing team, the service team, whoever's using these contact databases, it'll save you a ton of headaches and potentially dollars in the future. And then beyond that, HubSpot is charging based off of your contact list. So by cleaning up your database, cleaning out bad contacts, adding the right information, this will also help to keep down the cost of your technology. All right. This is one of my favorite topics to talk about. I think it's one of those tools that often gets overlooked, but sales documents. As a sales guy, right, I get on a ton of calls, and on almost every discovery call, I get the question of, can you send me a case study, or can you send me more info about your agency? Can I see some examples of your work? And what I do is I hop into Slack and I ask the marketing team, like, hey, do we have a website example for a SaaS company? With documents, it helps to eliminate that process, so your team will always know where the sales and marketing materials are. Documents allows you to have that one designated place within your database to keep your one-pagers, your ebooks, the PowerPoints, the Word docs, the PDFs, templates, NDAs, proposals. You know where it is. It's all live right there in your CRM. And to break that down even further, you're able to build out custom folders, giving you added organization for if it's an internal doc, an external doc, a sales doc, a marketing doc, whatever it might be. Any document that you have completed should live there in HubSpot. From a sales perspective, this is where it gets super interesting. The tracking piece from the documents tool is bar none one of the best features that we've got. Some of you may already know this, and some of you may not, but if you don't, I promise that the tracking is going to be a total game changer for you, because with any document that you have saved within your HubSpot, you can share it one-to-one via email. You can embed it in a link, an article, whatever it might be, an email template. And this link will let you know as soon as someone opens the document you've sent them. I mean, if you think about it, if I'm sending a proposal, how invaluable is it that I get to know when that prospect is looking at it? And even more so, I get to know if they've revisited it 3 or 4 times. On the flip side, if it's been a week since I've heard from a prospect, I'm likely starting to sweat, right? I think the deal is on its last legs or possibly dead, and it may not necessarily be the case, but as the crazy salesperson that I am, I'm certainly jumping to that conclusion. I start to get a notification a couple days later that they're opening these example documents. 5 minutes later, they're opening the case study. Like, this is the indication that I need, that the deal is not dead, that they're still interested, that they've been out of town or had a ton on their plate or whatever it might be. And now we're top of mind, and I know that, and that person is going to get a call from me today. So getting that insight, knowing that tracking, it's invaluable to send these documents via HubSpot and saved within HubSpot, rather than just attaching a PDF to an email or sending something that hasn't been saved in that documents folder. Another massive piece for us is we have IP and I don't want to give that IP away, right? The last thing I want to do is let my competition see our IP, see our terms of service, see our pricing model, anything like that. And by sending it via documents, you have the ability to gate or keep that information ungated. So if you want to gate something, you can make them add an email, say that I am who this was sent to. They enter their email, they can see that information, but they won't be able to send that out without another person having to enter their email. So it's not a total complete lockstep, but it will help to ensure that you know who's looking at your information and your documents. Additionally, I think it's a big piece that you can gate this. And if somebody sends this to, other key stakeholders or decision makers, I'll then know who else is important on this project, who I should talk about in the next step. So knowing who else from the organization is opening these, documents that I'm sending, super invaluable. And finally, staying on theme here, right? I think there's a huge time savings that comes with, the sales documents. One, your documents are neatly organized within and housed just within the CRM. So whether your team is growing or the team is changing, it's easy to point everybody to the right materials that they would need moving forward. And then two, with the click of a couple mouse clicks, you can send out these documents and get invaluable feedback back that helps to shorten that sales cycle and ensure that you're staying on top of prospects and things like that that are most engaged. The other side piece that I would add is there's two different places that you can house documents within HubSpot, right? Documents versus files. You can use them virtually the same, but what I would say is if you want anything tracked, if you want to know how people are interacting or viewing, different pieces, that's when I would put it into the document file or document tool versus files. Here is a quick example of what you would expect to see with a shared document. As you can see, this would be a packages that we've sent out to people. You can see Dustin has viewed it 10 times, Garrett's viewed it 3, Yvonne and Jim just once each. But that in total, it's been viewed 67 times. If I scrolled down further on the screenshot, you'd be able to see who else has looked at it, how many times. But this is the type of valuable information. And again, you'll get that notification trigger as well, which is huge. Cool. Templates itself, super fascinating to me. And I guess I'll jump right into it. But in my opinion, these are the most underutilized tool. Templates are one of those things that we all know what they are, but oftentimes we bypass creating more after we've already made our initial push. So whether you just got HubSpot set up or you just joined the organization and you added some common templates that you used to use in a previous role, that's typically where I see people stop building new templates. So what I would say is, take some time to think about how often am I adding new templates. There's oftentimes, whether it's seasonal, whether it's a new year, whether it was COVID-19, things are coming up that have changed your business, changed the FAQs, change the way you're doing outreach. So ensure that you're building these templates and staying kind of up to date. I know for me, like I oftentimes also fall into the habit of responding to every single email I get. And a lot of times it's almost an identical email as the one I typed up earlier that morning or the one I typed the evening before, whatever it might be. So building those templates for FAQs, for the most common questions you get, for the most common emails, whether it's one sentence or 3 paragraphs, like it's massive for you. Templates allow for that quick response to almost every question we get, and also will help to build some continuity and language between your team and your organization. We also view templates as a massive training tool, whether you're coaching people on different ways they can respond or ways they can improve their processes, whether we're training a new hire or just arming people with new approaches and responses and verbiage. I think these templates are massively important. If you take the time to build out just a wide variety, and I really can't stress it enough, like a wide variety of these different templates, You save yourself a ton of hassle of people not knowing how to respond, not responding. And it's just super invaluable from that perspective. Continuity between tone and voice. I think this is one of those things that templates feels like very structured, very, every person should have their own, and they should. But it's one of those things that people don't think about, the tone and voice. Tone and voice is something that your company has, right? When you add website copy, or you send out a marketing email, blast a monthly newsletter, or updating a new blog post, you want that tone and voice to shine through. If you take Chick-fil-A, for example, right, I'm going to get a very similar response, whether I'm in Portland, Oregon, or across the country in Charleston, South Carolina. And the reason that you'll get that similar response is because they've given everybody a template. Chick-fil-A likely isn't the greatest comparison for your business, but it's one that we can all relate with and likely appreciate. So I use that example to say your email templates should do the exact same thing. It should bring that branding, that tone, and that voice out every single time. They should marry your branding with your outreach or your responses. I mean, the one thing I would say is I don't want people to take away the fact that like every response should be templated and there isn't room for customization or kind of that personal touch. But I would strongly encourage you to add that to every template. But these templates will help to guide that conversation, give you the proper response, or give your team the proper responses. The time savings aspect here is likely fairly obvious, but if you're like me, you've stared at a screen, an email that you've received for minutes, if not hours, or closed it and saved it and said, I'll get back to this afternoon or tomorrow, right? And these templates will help you to just respond a little bit quicker, to not need help every time, whatever it might be. They won't be the catch-all answer every time, but they can get you 75% of the way there, or can help trigger kind of that thought process on a creative and on-brand response to almost anything. Playbooks and snippets. If you're not in sales or not super familiar, playbooks are guided cards that will help your sales team and they can follow to ensure that they're asking the right questions and taking real in-time notes with any sales call that's going on. Playbooks will be there on the right-hand side of a contact, a company, a ticket, anything like that. And so you can just click into the relevant playbook. Playbooks are only available on the pro or enterprise level. So I'll also talk about how we can use snippets to similarly kind of guide a conversation just like you would within a playbook. I'll probably say playbooks more than I do snippets here, but know that they can be used interchangeably. The interface will just be a little bit different, and playbooks look a little bit more professional and buttoned up. I think the main reason that we use playbooks is even the most skilled salesperson will have an off day, right? We may run through the same exact discovery call a million times, but that doesn't make us immune to a bad call or brain fog or whatever else could be going on in your personal life. So by utilizing those playbooks, you can create some interactive content cards, which you can access at any time. And by having these, they'll help to guide anything that we might need, help to play defense against those bad days or off calls that you might be having. And best of all, going back to kind of the clean data piece, they'll help to organize the information and data you glean from any conversation. So as we move a sales deal down the pipeline, whether it's the finance team, whether it's the service team, whoever might be taking over next, you can ensure that you've got all of the data there housed within these playbooks or snippets, which is super important moving forward and a huge time saver. Training-wise, playbooks and snippets are massive. It's inevitable that your team is going to change or it's going to grow, and thus you'll always need to coach the sales team members. So if you think about how simple these playbooks and snippets can help, right? They give you the talk track on how to answer almost any call, question that they might encounter. And what I love about playbooks is you can get super granular with them. So If you want to build a different discovery call based off of the industry or the persona or where we're at in the deal stage or whatever it might be, we can get as creative with these playbooks as possible and really make them for your sales process, your sales team, and your organization. Continuity, I think going back to the tone and voice, right? Hammering home that these playbooks and snippets, you're able to feed everybody the right way to communicate, pose questions, answer FAQs every single time. They'll have these responses and questions and answers right in front of them as they're on a call. These are fully customizable tools, so you'll be able to keep track of your team's consistency from both a question and a response standpoint. And then the time savings piece here, I think you're getting new hires up to speed. You're helping your sales team to glean the right information. If you've got a small team and you need out of office coverage, right? Somebody's able to pull up a snippet or a playbook and say, okay, this is the questions I need to ask on this call. Or just getting somebody up to speed quickly, helping to coach them, get them back on track to hit their numbers, whatever it might be. These are massive. And then the ability to just document all of that information on, like I said, a company record, a contact record, a ticket record, whatever it might be to hand off to anybody else within your team. Super valuable to be able to see that information right there, and it's all neatly organized. Here's a couple of quick examples of the difference between a playbook and a snippet. If we're looking up here at the top left, goals, plans, challenges. This was a built canned kind of playbook for a discovery call from HubSpot. It would be automatically uploaded into there, but you're going to get kind of a standard discovery call process. Like I said, very neatly organized, looks a little bit more buttoned up. Over here, we'll see the snippet. This is one that we had built 3-4 years ago on our discovery call process. Was able to organize all the information that we needed. And the snippet tool is just this little piece of paper down here. It'll pop up, and I just clicked on our discovery call snippet. So it doesn't look as neat, buttoned up, but it's one of those things that if you don't have the pro or enterprise level, still super valuable to guide conversations, help anybody kind of get up to speed. Great. Deal pipeline itself, it feels pretty self-explanatory. Everybody knows what the deal pipeline is. You get an opportunity, it progresses through each stage of the pipeline. Final outcome, it lands on either closed won or closed lost. And that's how a deal pipeline works. But that said, your deal pipeline should be doing so much more for you as managers, as salespeople, as marketers. So a few tips that we can kind of glean from the deal pipeline is HubSpot is an automation tool, right? A lot of the places that people don't think to implement automation is within their deals pipeline. Within your pipeline, you should be building out automation for both internal and external communications. If a deal reaches a certain point in the pipeline, should someone on the C-suite be notified? Maybe a sales manager or the account manager that's going to be taken over, a service team member, your accounting team. Set up those internal notifications as deals kind of progress to make sure there isn't a lack of communication internally. And additionally, set notifications for deals that sit in your pipeline too long. Send a notification to that salesperson that says, hey, this hit this deal stage or consideration stage a week ago. It's time for you to send out this document to try to pick that momentum in the sales process back up. And finally, if something reaches, closed lost or closed won, what communication needs to happen next? Should a customer receive a thank you email or a next step email? If something hits closed lost, should your team receive a task in a few weeks or a few months to follow up and see how that prospect is doing? Is there a chance to bring this conversation back up? This is one that we use all the time by customizing kind of the deal stages. We've got a closed lost, and we've got a closed lost re-engage that alerts me a couple months down the road to follow up with a prospect that maybe we had great rapport with and it just wasn't the right time, or maybe this person's been kicking the can and they're just not ready to pull the trigger, but I get a notification, hey, let's reach back out to this person, see if we can start that conversation back up. The forecasting tool, it's fairly straightforward, but the forecasting tool is amazing. It allows you to keep track of your team or an individual rep's progression towards their goal. So by default, the forecasting tool uses deal stages to forecast revenue based on their likelihood to close. And I think that's the most obvious way that people use the forecasting tool, but a lot of people don't think about the other ways that you could use the forecasting tool. I've seen people use the forecasting tool as a way to manage internal bandwidth. What team will be able to take on this deal if it closes? It's at a 75% close possibility. Who has the opportunity to take this one on and put this one on their plate? It may help with your hiring. We don't have the internal bandwidth to take this on. It's time to start looking for some new hires because we've got a couple deals that are pretty close to closing. May help you to order new inventory or something like that. So this forecasting tool, while it's great to know how good you guys are doing on a revenue standpoint, I think there's a lot of other uses for that forecasting tool as well. This one always shocks me a little bit because it gets overlooked, but I mentioned it earlier. CRMs are out-of-the-box solutions. They aren't really custom built for your business. The deal cards, as a HubSpot agency, we're in a ton of different portals helping clients to optimize their HubSpot. I oftentimes see people using the standard deal cards that show just the run-of-the-mill information that you would expect, the company name and the amount of that deal or whatever it might be. You really need to customize those deal cards because it'll save you a ton of time of clicking around, scrolling down, looking on the left side, looking on the right side, but customize it based off of what's important for you throughout that deal pipeline. So looking at, what project members are attached to this deal or the size of the deal, the type of deal, whether for us, we use retainer versus project, what the next steps are. Is there a task? When was the last time this person was contacted? You can get very creative with what's on your deal card. So just make sure those deal cards are built for you and just whatever is most important for your company. Time savings aspect here. The automation piece is the biggest one, alerting you to hitting close, lost, re-engage, or allowing team members to know this has moved to this stage, it's time to get prepared, whatever it might be. That automation is just such a huge time saver. The forecasting, automatically pulling numbers from you on both a micro and macro level, not making you go out and build out these custom reports for revenue forecasting, things like that. And then those deal cards, like I said, housing everything kind of on one simple view, obviously is a huge time saver. Here is a couple examples of just simple automations that we use. So we've got deferred within our deal stages. If somebody defers, like I said, maybe kicking the can, call me back in 3 months, whatever it might be, this will create a task for me to reach back out. Close lost works very similarly. Reach back out in a couple months. And then closed won allows our entire team to know that we closed a new deal, alerts different people on what needs to happen next. But there's a lot of different ways that you can get creative with this, build bigger workflows, whatever it might be. These are just some very simple automations that we've used within our own deal pipeline that have helped tremendously. And that's where we're at today, guys. We don't have a ton more tips or tricks, but would love to hear any sort of feedback, any sort of questions on tools, cleanup methodology, anything like that. If anybody's got questions, would love to answer them.
Yes, we do have some questions, Michael. Let me bring myself back up here. So, so first one, how often should you check your bounced email notifications?
I think it's fairly unique to your business. I do a lot of sales outreach, so it's one-to-one, very personal. If anything bounces back to me automatically, that's when I go ahead and clean up that contact, get it out of the database, look for a different email, whatever it might be. I don't know, Dustin, if you've got an answer from more of a marketing perspective on how often you should check those, but that's one of those processes that from a sales perspective, if something bounces back or doesn't look right, I'm checking it right then and there and taking care of it.
Yeah, I think that if we're pulling in a bunch of data, so maybe it's like we pulled a list from Zoom Info, we're importing it into HubSpot, we're sending some marketing emails, we're sending sequences, things like that. I always like to and recommend setting up some automation through a workflow to pull a list of anyone that's bounced. And then I go in there, depending on how frequently you're sending those emails or how frequently you're importing that data. Go in there every other week, every week, once a month, something like that, so that you can just figure out who is bouncing. You can also add to that automation to make sure that those people are taken out of marketing contacts, so they're not counted towards your HubSpot pricing. So if somebody bounces, we don't want to have to pay for them. So I would say that answer of like how frequently or how often you should check it really depends on how often you're pulling in that information or how often you're emailing.
Next question I saw was, do you have an example of a playbook? If you have the pro or enterprise level, you'll have some canned email or playbooks already within your portal. That'll give you a great starting point, but at the same time, HubSpot has put out a ton of different blogs on what you should put within your playbook. But like I mentioned, here's kind of a playbook and a couple different, questions here on the left-hand side that might be important. You can drag and drop and things like that to build these playbooks for yourself.
Yeah, when you go into the playbook tool and go to create one, HubSpot does a really good job of creating a lot of like useful templates to start from. That's where I would go. Another question, how does email tracking work? Can everyone in the portal see my emails?
You're able to turn tracking off of specific emails. But if you're sending an email that is tracked, assuming everybody's got the right permissions, they'd be able to land on that contact or company record and see the emails that were sent previously. Am I right in that, Dustin?
Well, so it's tracking versus logging. Tracking is going to let you know like who's opened it, how many times they've opened it, what they've clicked on, things like that. Logging is where it will actually get into the CRM. So what we're talking about here is the HubSpot sales extension. So it can be Outlook, it can be Gmail. And so if you are logging, just be cognizant that that's going to put that email and responses and all of that in HubSpot. And so anyone that has access to like view a contact or a company that it's associated with will be able to see that email. So if you don't want that to happen, just make sure it's not logged. If you are tracking, it doesn't make it accessible by anyone else. That's just giving you the data of how is somebody interacting with the email.
Cool. Thanks for that.
How can we get buy-in from our sales team for deal automation? Our AEs usually want to do everything themselves.
Typically for me, I think of it from a perspective of like, HubSpot is a very powerful tool that isn't meant to replace me by any standpoint, but it is meant to make my life a little bit easier. I think if you start with very simple automations of like, hey, when it hits this deal stage, would you mind getting a notification that maybe it's time to reach back out, whether it's in 3 days or a week from now or whatever it might be? A lot of times they'll say no. But if we can just start with very simple automation, I think that's the easiest way to just kind of buy that build in for, deeper, more complex workflows or automation. But if we can just start with a simple task, a nudge, whatever it might be, to you to ensure that you're just staying on top of your sales and your pipeline and stuff like that, that's kind of where I would start.
Have you used the new prospecting workspace in Sales Hub? What are the benefits of it?
That's a great question. I'm not even overly familiar with the
It
workspace.
just came out. It's still in beta. I think it's super interesting. We haven't done a ton in it yet, but it is kind of a nice dashboard for anyone that's in sales that kind of gives you an overview of like what your day looks like. It will pull in your calendar, all of your tasks, sequences that are running, all of those things so that you can kind of work from one central spot. It is interesting. I think it's also interesting that they called it prospecting because it isn't necessarily just that. It's kind of like a sales reps dashboard. I think it is super interesting. I think would love to hear everyone's feedback as you start to use it. Like I said, it is very new. Just showed up in the last, I think, week or 2 weeks, something like that.
Yeah, that's cool. I heard prospecting workspace and I was like, if I can have a new prospecting tool that's already ingrained within my HubSpot, that's awesome. But I just wrote that down. That's cool. I'll have to check out more of the functionality and how to use it. But I guess the simple answer is no, haven't used it yet.
Yeah. Another one, how do I set up forecasting if my goals are quarterly?
Dustin, do you want to take that one? Because you're the one that typically handles how we set those types of things up.
So it is dependent on your level of Sales Hub. Sales Pro is fairly restricted here to revenue goals based on your fiscal year that you set up in your settings. Quarterly has been kind of an issue of like, if we're focused on like just a quarter for our goals, it can be difficult, and like getting into other pieces as far as like goals that aren't just revenue based. What I typically recommend is just splitting up that quarter. You can set like your goals per month, split that up over the quarter, and kind of function that way. There's not really like a perfect solution to it. No, go ahead.
Do you have experience with the new coaching playlists under the sales dropdown? Again, I do not have any familiarity with it. I'm writing it down again because I haven't explored it at all. Have you, Dustin?
So this is all based around recorded calls. And so you can essentially pull out lists of like example calls. So if you're bringing on new reps, things like that, you can pull in like successful calls from sales managers or other reps to use as training material. I think it's really interesting. I think the recording, the conversation intelligence, like all of those features that HubSpot is like really starting to invest in on the sales side can make a big difference for sales teams. I think the biggest barrier that I see to it is sales managers have to take the time, right? Like you need to go through, listen to those calls, figure out which calls are valuable and should be used as training material. But like once you have that, then you do have that kind of playlist of, okay, new rep, here's what a discovery call looks like for us. Here's a good example of it. Let's watch that, go through it, and answer questions. So definitely for sales managers, I think it's something you've got to pay attention to. Should we be utilizing target accounts?
Again, I think this answer is going to vary business by business and based off of what you're selling and who your accounts may be. If you take an ABM approach, target accounts obviously make a ton of sense. If you know who your target accounts are, target industries, things like that, like I think it makes total sense. So it just depends on what your business is, what you're selling, what your service or offerings are. But in theory, if you're asking if you should use target accounts, I probably think you should.
Yeah, I think just to that same point, if you're focused on an account-based marketing model, where you have a defined market, you know exactly who you're trying to work with and sell to, and those kind of things, it can be super valuable. I don't think it's for everyone. I think especially if you're in more of like a B2C kind of space, target accounts aren't really going to work for you. But it is, I think, honestly, just HubSpot's first step towards ABM. But I think going that route, if you have those target companies, those target accounts that you're trying to sell into, taking the time to set that up, utilize it, and pay attention to how those organizations are interacting with your organization can be super valuable. Do you use the sequence tool? It seems more of a marketing tool.
For myself, I do use the sequence tool every single day. I use it as a sales tool. I typically think of sequences as a sales tool and workflows as the marketing tool. I'm able to bulk upload, my email outreach or prospecting list or whatever it might be within this sequence tool. But I add those personalization tokens within every email to ensure that it feels like that custom one-to-one outreach. Obviously, you can also just add a single contact or 2 contacts, whatever it might be, a small amount into those sequences to just ensure that you're in kind of that sales outreach sequence. But I build mine with different emails, automated emails, tasks to call, tasks to reach out on LinkedIn. So I use both the email automation plus the task automation within them.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, sequences are definitely a sales tool, not a marketing tool. The way that I like to explain it is sequences are a one-to-one. You can send 50 at a time, but it is one-to-one outreach. It's like you're sitting down, typing an email from your Gmail account to a specific person. On the marketing side, that is the workflow tools where we can send kind of automated mass emails one-to-many. So I think sequences are very much valuable from a sales prospecting kind of perspective. Where's the best place to go to see what contacts I need to work on?
Again, going to be a unique answer, but it's going to depend on how your CRM and HubSpot is set up. If you go to the top left of your HubSpot, there's going to be the contacts dropdown. That'll bring you to a full view of every contact within your database. If you guys haven't started building out those list segmentations or things like that, that would be where I would start is how do we segment our database into prospects versus customers versus this industry or this persona, whatever it might be, whatever works best for your business. From there, once you're in the full contacts list, contact list, if you haven't segmented the database at all, you can sort it by, newest contacts or whatever it might be. And then you can click through and see, oh, they came through a form on our website, or we bulk uploaded these from a lead list, or I prospected them. So there's a lot of different views and ways you can get, kind of fun with the contact list and where to start. But it'll all depend on how kind of your HubSpot is set up currently.
Yeah, I really like the prospecting dashboard for this as well. So if you have sequences running or automation like creating tasks or anything like that, it's going to give you kind of that snapshot of like who needs extra outreach, where are people at, what tasks are outstanding to reach out to specific contacts, what's your schedule look like. I think that gives you a good starting point of who should be my focus today. So definitely check out the prospecting tool. As a sales manager, what are the top things I should look or do in HubSpot to make sure my team is doing well?
So at that starter level, if you are above the free version, you get the individual reps performance. You can really customize those types of reports. At the enterprise level, you get custom objects if you're pulling in from another CRM or something like Salesforce. But building those reports to just ensure that people are making, the right outreach, they're following up on time, making their call numbers if that's what's important, email outreach. I would say building those custom reports for each individual sales rep is where I would start.
Yeah, and under that sales dropdown, there is a sales analytics tab. So that's going to give you a lot of the metrics and reports and things like that that are going to kind of help you figure out which reps are performing best. That's also another place that you can start and pull in those reports that are applicable for you into a dashboard. Can I color code deals based on their deal status?
Dustin, I know that, we can color code specific pieces, like for me, like the type of deal, project versus retainer. We can change that color. Can we change the color based off of deal status?
So it is a tag, and I think it's still in beta. If you're not aware, there are public betas that you can get into. So if you click on the drop down in the top right, there is a link for product updates. If you go there, and then on the left side at the very bottom, there's betas. So they did, I think it is still in beta. I'm not 100% sure of that, but they have colored deal tags. So you can set rule-based tags that will change, and you can set the color and all of that. You're not changing like the full card or anything like that to a specific color, but you can have colored tags based on pretty much whatever you're hoping to achieve. There's also lots of other cool things in there, and HubSpot doesn't really make like big announcements about like what is new in the betas. So I would just continuously check back on that. I typically check like once a week to see what new cool betas are out there that I want to try. Can I change the close date property default on a new deal to be clear and have no date?
Dustin, I'll defer to you on this.
So it is going to default to the end of the month. I think there is a way to change that, but I don't know just off the top of my head how to do that exactly. If you want to, I don't know who put this comment in there, but if you want to shoot us an email, we can track down that answer and get that to you.
And just to clarify, if anybody has additional questions, feel free to send them over. My email is michael@hivestrategy.com. Dustin's is dustin@hivestrategy.com.
I know we're coming close to time. We've got a couple more. How can I make my new deal default pipeline to be my name pipeline rather than sales pipeline? So this is just, I think the question is just changing the name of your pipeline. So that's all just done in deal settings. So kind of another like quick tip is if you go to the tool that you're trying to get to the settings for, so in this case, go to sales and then deals, and then click the gear icon in the top right. It's going to take you to your deal settings. So HubSpot's smart enough to know like where you were and take you to the settings for that specific tool. When you're in there, then you can go to your pipelines and like it'll say select pipeline. It'll show your specific pipeline. Under actions, there's rename this pipeline. So you can change it to whatever you want it to be. And last one, how do I require my reps to input certain information into properties before they can close the deals?
This is something we've used in the past for like ensure that we've got this kind of information before it can move to different deal stages. Dustin, do you want to talk about how we've set that up in the past?
Yeah, so in your pipeline automation or in your pipeline settings, you can actually go in there and under the configure tab, there's conditional stage properties. So on that right side, if you hover over, you can click edit properties, choose whatever properties you want to make either mandatory or optional. And you can do this per stage and per property. So some can be mandatory, some can be optional. And then what will happen once that's saved, if somebody moves a deal, like in this example, to like a closed one, and you want to make sure that certain properties are filled out before it moves into that, it will ask those questions. And if they don't get filled out, they can't move the deal to that stage if they're mandatory. So I definitely recommend utilizing that. It's definitely a way to like kind of give some checks and balances to your sales team and make sure that like you're capturing all the information you need to before a deal hits a certain stage. And it can be done throughout the entire pipeline. Awesome. Well, so I think that was all of our questions. Thank you everyone for attending. Michael, thank you for all the insights and presentation. That was great. And we will be following up with an email with the recording. So if you have other people on your team that want to review it, or you want to reference something that Michael talked about, you'll definitely have access to that.
Yeah, I want to say thank you to everybody. I mean, it looked like there were a lot of people in the chat, a lot of questions in the Q&A. So I appreciate everybody taking the time to kind of sit with us and participate. If you have any additional questions, need additional tips, questions on, how to use your Sales Hub or move up to the next tier of Sales Hub, anything like that, certainly feel free to reach out. I put Dustin and I's email in the web chat, so feel free to save those.
Yeah, and then one last thing, I know we were talking about it at the very beginning, but Inbound, HubSpot's annual conference, is coming up. It's the first week of September. So if you are planning to attend, please let us know. We're working on scheduling a happy hour and kind of some fun, engaging things with folks out there. It is in Boston, and we will have a booth. We're at booth number 52, which probably means nothing to anyone currently, but it will be towards the main stage. And I will also be presenting. So my session is on Friday morning. Hope to see all of you out at Inbound. It's a great time.
Yeah. Cool.
Perfect. Thanks everyone.